Hi, I'm Gary Marcus, and I wrote the book Killer. I wrote the first draft of Killer 26 years ago in 1999, and I wrote 300 pages in 6 weeks. And then it sat on my computer for 24 years because, after all, I had businesses to run. I had developed an award winning hydroelectric power plant. I was developing other renewable energy projects. I started a knee brace company. I also had a restaurant with 55 employees, and I was doing philanthropic work on the board of the Eugene Symphony. By January 2024, I had sold all my business interest. I was no longer on the board of any nonprofits, and I went back to Killer. I rewrote it for 6 months, and in June 2024, I sent it to an agent figuring they'd snap it up because it was a winner. The agent wrote back saying the writing was strong, but the plot needed some work, so she recommended an editor. That editor suggested major changes in every chapter. So I enlisted 4 friends, including a published author, and another one of my friends was a Hollywood script doctor. For the next 6 months, the 5 of us rewrote almost every paragraph. We discussed the meanings of every word and the flow of every sentence. I grew very close to these editors, but especially to my sister, since so much of the book was about family issues in disguise. We unearthed family trauma, saving ourselves years of potential therapy. We emerged not only knowing each other better, but knowing ourselves better. I felt the book was still not as clear or as powerful as I wanted it to be. So I hired another editor, Emily Collins, who had written 8 women's books. Emily is extremely empathetic with an ear for dialogue. She can reduce an entire paragraph into one bolt of lightning. She also told me on several occasions, women don't think that way. And then she showed me, this is how women think. What you're about to read is a book that I could never have written by myself. It was written by a team of people who love the English language and who love a good story. I also solicited expertise. Friends of mine who are doctors and nurses made sure the hospital scene reflected the chaos in an emergency room on a Friday night with a full moon. Another friend of mine who dealt drugs told me what the cost of an 8 ball would be in 1974. An 8 ball, by the way, is 3.5 grams of cocaine, which is 1/8 of an ounce. My Israeli Special Forces friend engaged me in hand to hand combat and also said, you don't call it a bullet, you call it a round. A friend of mine who had been in prison told me real life stories of how stamps are used as currency. They can't have money, so they use stamps as currency. And told me stories about real life characters named Garlic Rick, Big Sean, Seven Tooth. And I personally knew the guard named Malcolm who had nicknamed me Professor when I lived for a year in that life as well. Once you finish the book and read the acknowledgments in part 4, you will have links to other true stories that inform the plot of Killer. Each story will be a hidden gem. For example, explaining the split personality of the infamous attorney Roy Cohn, or how a mental hospital in the 1960s was a criminal front for an operation that made millions of dollars a year by drugging teenagers and falsely imprisoning them. For 26 years, I've wanted to publish Killer, and now it's yours to buy either on Amazon or on my website, www.authorgarymarcus.com.